Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, dear guests, it is with great honor that the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Brazilian Bar Association Federal District Session welcomes you all to today's important discussion, Dialogues for Peace, Israel and Gaza, Combating Political Extremism in a Globalized. At this critical moment for global peace and understanding, we are proud to host two remarkable peace activists, internationally recognized for their commitment to building bridges across divides. Maoz Enon, Israeli social entrepreneur, founder of transformative tourism initiatives such as the Jesus Trail, the al-Eizariya, and the Abraham Hostels Network. And since the tragic loss of his parents in October,
Não tá lendo. Clarita.
eu vou ter que cortar, pessoal.
Lógico, não viu que não ficou bom, hein?
Ainda bem que thanks it's recorded. Pessoal, eu vou pedir para vocês, por gentileza da audiência, mutarem os seus microfones, porque está interferindo, tá? Eu vou ativar aqui, Tati, o mudo. Landers, eu te mutei, tá? Sérgio, eu vou te colocar como co-anfitrião e talvez você consiga mutar também. Você presta atenção nisso?
Com certeza.
Tá. Sorry for that, we'll begin again, okay? So, counting to 10. Sérgio, presta atenção, tá bom? Que fica difícil para mim. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and dear guests, it is with great honor that the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Brazilian Bar Association Distrito Federal Section welcomes you all to today's important discussion. Dialogues for Peace, Israel and Gaza Combating Political Extremism in a Globalized World. At this critical moment for global peace and understanding, we are proud to host two remarkable peace activists, internationally recognized for their commitment to building bridges across divides. Maoz Enon, Israeli social entrepreneur, founder of transformative tourism initiatives such as the Jesus Trail, the al-Eizariya, and the Abraham Hostels Network, and since the tragic loss of his parents in the October 7, 2023 attacks, a powerful advocate for reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians, and Aziz Abu Sarah, Palestinian author, cultural educator, and entrepreneur, co-founder of Mejdi Tours, a company that pioneers multi-narrative tourism to foster mutual understanding across cultural and religious lines. Mr. Sarah works has spanned conflict zones and from Colombia to Afghanistan, always centered on dialogue and healing. Together, they are the founders of Interac International, an organization whose mission is bold and inspiring: peace by 2030. Their vision is clear: to build lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians by 2030, fostering genuine understanding, creating spaces for meaningful dialogue, and supporting humanitarian efforts that benefit all citizens and communities in Israel and Palestine and beyond. Their message reminds us that even amid division and tragedy, hope and humanity can prevail. Today's dialogue will be guided by distinguished moderators: Professor Monique Sorachevs-Goldfeld from EDP, Professor Mohamed Arafa of Alexandria University and Cornell University, and myself, Clarita Maia, Chair of the International Relations Committee. We invite you all to join this conversation with open hearts and minds, committed to the idea that even the most entrenched conflicts can give way to understanding and peace when courageous individuals lead the way. Thank you for being with us today. Let us begin. Without further ado, I pass the floor to our speakers. Mr. Aziz Abu Sarah, please, the floor is yours. You are muted.
Thank you, Clarita, and thank you everyone for being here, for inviting us, for listening to us. As I mentioned to Clarita before we started recording, I've been to Brazil actually many times. Came first time for the World Cup, where I did a story for National Geographic about how sports can bring people together. And that was my first experience of falling in love, I guess, with Brazil. And then I came back many times after working on education and conflict resolution projects. And in my last book, Brazil is actually mentioned quite a few times. So it's uh, it's a place I hold very, very dear, and I'm very grateful for this experience. And I'm sure at some point Maoz and I would love to come and be there and do this hopefully in person next time as well. And I don't know, Maoz, if you've been to Brazil, but if not, I'm excited to take you there.
I am waiting. This is why I
Okay,
partner with you, Aziz, so you can take me to Brazil
sounds
for the
good.
first time.
Sounds good. Um, But for our conversation today, I guess I'll start by just giving you a little bit about my story, and then I'll pass to Maoz, and we'll talk about our vision and how we think it's possible to bring peace, and mentioning polarization, and not only in Israel and Palestine, but I think around the world, where now it's very hard to talk across political divides. This is something that is very important for the two of us, and how it's possible. There was actually a research done in a university in the US where they gave students two different color t-shirts, one red and one blue, and they asked them to see how they wanted to see how that really transformed their view of each other. And immediately, as students wore t-shirts that were different colors, they started seeing each other as the other, and eventually see each other as the enemy. Even though they were students who were friends, who knew each other, they were both from the same culture, from the same language, same even religious maybe beliefs, and they already saw each other as other because they wore different t-shirts. Now, while I think a lot of polarization hate is a learned experience, and that's why it's something we can also overcome. And our existence here, Maoz and I, is an example how it is possible to overcome that. I grew up in Palestine, I grew up in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem. Um, I got to learn about the occupation firsthand when I was a little child. I was probably shot at first time when I was around 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. And this became a norm of growing up in Palestine. Um, when I was 10 years old, when I was 9 years old, my brother was arrested from home and allegedly throwing stones. He was tortured in prison, which resulted in his death soon after he was released from prison. I I was 10 years old when that happened, and like any 10 years old, I responded with a lot of anger, a lot of dilemma, and maybe this urge that if somebody kills your brother, then your response is to fight back. And for the next 8 years, that has become my focus. I was very angry, I was very bitter, and revenge seemed the only path forward, that there was no choice. Until I went to study Hebrew in an ulpan. An ulpan is where Jewish immigrants go to study Hebrew in Israel. It was mandatory to study Hebrew in my high school, but I refused to study the language because I saw it as a language of the enemy. And I became very active back then in politics as well in my high school. But in my Hebrew class, I realized something very important. One, I realized the power of one small kind action to change and transform people. My Hebrew teacher realized how uncomfortable, and she was Israeli Jewish woman, she realized how uncomfortable I was in the Hebrew class. And she would come to me and try to make me feel comfortable. She spoke to me in the few Arabic words she was able to say. She would invite me to bring Arabic music, and we translate it together to Hebrew, so we will teach it to the other students. She would bring stories from the Palestinian culture, and she didn't know much, but she still brought that, or political even stories from Palestine. And I saw how this person really transformed my thinking. And it was this acts of kindness and acts of awareness that has really impacted me. So that's the first thing I learned. And the second thing I learned there was just the power of making a choice. Where as a child, I felt I didn't have a choice. And at this point in the Hebrew class, where almost there were no other Palestinians there, it was mainly Jewish students, I learned that I do have a choice. And while you don't control what other people do to you, you always can control how you respond. And I made the decision that my response would be following a peace path, a path that brings us together. And since then, this has been what I've been focused on, is how can we bring down those walls of ignorance and of fear and of hatred that divide us. And my work with Ma'oz is pretty much the example of that. The two of us are modeling an example of how two people who have every right to hate each other are able to come together, work together, and change the future together.
Great and very inspiring. Mr. Moss, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Clarita. Thank you, everyone, for watching and being here. And thank you, Aziz. It's always inspiring to hear you and listen to you. It doesn't matter how many times I will do it. And what we are learning together is that we have the agency, not that just to change our destiny and our personal reality, but that if we are working together, we can change the reality of the world. And this is our mission, and this is our ambition, to change the world. And today is a very special day here in Israel. It's the National Memorial Day. And for tonight, we are marking the 20th time there is a joint Memorial Day for Israelis and Palestinians bereaved families. And this is the second day that I am a bereaved family. And it's very emotional day. And I'm going to be in the ceremony with my Palestinians, brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters to pain, to suffering. We sacrificed our loved one, and we want that we are not willing to be victims. We choose not to be victims. And we want the price we paid, and my parents and Aziz's brother, that they are victims because they lost their life. But we want them to be victims of peace and not victims of war. And this is what we are working very hard, day and night, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, to make them be victims of peace. This will be the only way we'll be able to justify for ourselves, but also for them, that the price they paid was worthy. So yeah, sorry for being emotional. It's really very a difficult day. So my parents were among the first victims of the Hamas attack, early morning, October 7th. They lived in Netiv Asara. It's a Israeli community just sitting on the borders, and my parents' house was 200 meters from the border. And what I realized in the weeks after their death is that both me and my 4 siblings, I have 3 sisters and 1 young brother, we were prepared for the October 7th to know exactly what to do, how to act, and what to say when such a personal tragedy will happen, will tear us apart, basically. And we were prepared by our parents. They prepared us for this moment. And they raised us in a small kibbutz, 1.5 kilometers from the border of Gaza, and kibbutz Niram. And they raised us knowing exactly that we have the agency to change the future, not if to predict the future, but to change it. My father was a farmer. He was the best farmer in Israel. I have facts, and I can prove it, but we don't have the time now. I can prove it, that he was the best farmer in Israel. Actually, now his partner, which happened to be a classmate of mine, is in Brazil at the moment. Together, they developed a special sesame variety that can be cultivated and produce very high volume of seeds per hectares, 10 times more than the previous variety was able to produce. Its resilience to climate change, and it can be harvested by combine. And it's named after this sesame variety, named after my father. And now his partner is in Brazil, and they are selling the sesame with great success. And it will be cultivated, I believe, in millions of hectares throughout Brazil. And it was very difficult to be a farmer in the Israeli desert. Every evening, my father would share how devastating the situation in the field is. If it's because of drought, of floods, insects, heat waves, or cold wave. And in the same sentence that he described how difficult their reality today is he would say, next year I'm going to sow wheat again, because next year will be better. I will learn from my mistakes. I will consult with other farmers. I will get the best seeds, I'll fertile the land, and I would sow with great faith that next year will be better. And this is exactly what Aziz and I, but so many others, Israelis and Palestinians, and now with you, you are our Brazilian partners. We must create an international coalition in order to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So this is just the beginning of our relationship. And we really want you to be our partners. And we are committed, and we are here to promise you that we would work on the ground. And with your international support again, you don't need me to tell you how great nation Brazil is. We're going to make it happen by 2030, Clarita, like you already said. This is our time frame. And I was born in a Jewish Israeli community all my life. And by the age of 30, like many young Israelis, I already traveled twice around the world. I've been to many places, unfortunately not to Brazil, but to many places, including in South America, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. And I realized that I know so much about indigenous communities in New Zealand, in Australia, in Asia. I know their lifestyle, I know their culture, I know their traditions. But at the age of 30, I had not even one Palestinian friend. I didn't know the difference of Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, and Ramadan. I didn't know where Jesus was born, where Jesus is buried, and never heard about the Annunciation. And it was all happening here in the Holy Land, in the Promised Land. And I realized that I was living for 30 years within walls of ignorance, or literally physical wall. And when there is ignorance, there is fear. When there is fear, there is hate. And when there is hate, we can do horrible things to each other. And I wanted to open a gate within those walls, to build a bridge. So exactly 20 years ago, together with my wife, Shtomit, we opened the first guest house, hospitality facility in the old city of Nazareth, the largest Palestinian community within Nazareth, the Fawzi Azar Inn. And we weren't just becoming a member of the community, but among the leaders of the community. Dozens of hostels, boutique hotels, guest houses, family stay were open on the path we literally paved. And we learned that the first step in reaching a shared society and a shared future is knowing the other side narrative. We must know the other side pain, sorrow, agony, challenges, but also dreams and inspiration. If we'll silence, if we'll wall between us, if we'll oppress the other side, we're gonna accept resistance. And when there is a resistance, it's behind our control if it's going to be non-violence resistance, like I believe or assume many of us here in this webinar participated few times in our life, or it's going to be a violence resistance, which I completely reject. And so we start preaching for shared life and investing in dialogue within Jewish and Arabs in Israel, and just give you geopolitical understanding about the people living between the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. There are about 14 million people living in the land, half of them Palestinian, half of them Jewish, Israelis. 2 million were living in Gaza till October the 7th, Palestinians. 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank, 2 million Palestinians living in the state of Israel with Israeli citizenship and ID, and 7 million Palestinians, again, living in the state of Israel. So altogether 14 million, 50% Israelis, 50% Palestinians. And with the tragic loss of my parents and so many of my childhood friends, I realized now it's our turn to sow. Like my father was sowing wheat, now it's our turn to sow hope, to sow the seeds of the future, and to sow the seeds of forgiveness. I will start with the seeds of hope, and then maybe I'll open for, you have like an amazing moderator here. So I would also love to hear your comment. But what I learned after October 7th, that hope is not something you can lose. It's not something you can find. And it's not something that someone else will bring you or give you. Hope is a verb, it's an action. Hope is an action. And it's the formula to make hope is very simple. We create hope with other people by envisioning a better future and acting in order to make it into a reality. And this is what we would like to encourage you or invite you to do with us. To envision a better future and to act together in order to make it into reality. So this is the friend that on a daily basis, people ask me, Maoz, what are you doing now to make a living? Or how do you fill your day? I fill my day with creating hope.
Great, Miles. I will pass the floor now for the moderators. They are, I'm sure, eager to address you some questions. Please, Monique, you have the word.
First of all, Maoz and Aziz, thank you very much for being with us. As I said, as a Brazilian that holds an Israeli citizenship, it's very important. And I'm a scholar that deals with the history of Middle East, especially of the conflict, Israeli-Palestine conflict. And always, I don't know, in the last 20 years, always when I thought about the conflict, it was at the beginning by myself. I always tried to teach the both narratives, the parallel narratives. And then I realized there's one institution called the Brandeis University, one professor called Ilan Troen, that he teaches that. So I don't know how much you know about their work. So that's the basis of my work, teaching about always trying to, what you do as activists, as a professor dealing with the conflict. I always try to show how is the Israeli and Zionist side and the Arab and Palestinian side. And that's the way I believe I can, inside my scholarship, try to teach about this conflict. So we are in the same boat. Thank you very much for being with us. I believe that you, Maoz and Aziz, in your work, standing together, third narrative, woman wage peace, all of you deserves a Nobel Prize peace because your work is very important. And I really believe that the Brazilian public needs to learn more about this work. So thank you again. I have 4 questions. The first one is connected to something very important to the Brazilian public. That's the Pope. the Epiphore, the Pope Francis. Pope Francis just passed away. He was, although he was Argentinian, people in Brazil really loved him. He was really dear to the Brazilian public. And we know that since October 7th, since the war, he talked every night with the Christians in Gaza. And he was a very dear friend of the Portuguese Israeli Henrique Zimmermann, Israeli. And so he had very close relations for both sides, and I believe it was for real. I believe that it was something that he really did in his daily life, and you both met him. So I would like to ask you, please, to share this experience about how was meeting the Pope Francis, and how important it is to have important people, public people, as the Pope, working together in this activism for peace in the Israeli-Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a few things that I think is important to say about Pope Francis. One, it was very powerful meeting him, and I think the shiver in us from that moment still runs through our bodies a year later today. I think what's powerful about Pope Francis is he had empathy and compassion for both sides, but he also spoke the truth. He spoke against killing civilians. He spoke against hostages, taken hostages. He spoke against oppression. He spoke for justice and for peace. And that's what makes him very unique. He also, probably of all the world leaders, I think he was the most consistent and was not afraid to speak truth to power, was not afraid to challenge other leaders on their stands and their, I would even argue, cowardness when it comes to Israel and Palestine. And that's what made him unique. He wasn't really taking sides in the sense of, I am for Israel or I'm for Palestine. He was taking a stand for what is right. He was taking a stand for people. And that's what we felt when we met him. I think to me, I just did an online eulogy for him. And for me, there were a few powerful things about meeting him. One is watching him as he came through the auditorium, the theater, the Roman theater, and how he went and spent time on his way to the stage with the people who had, mental health challenges, with the people who are in wheelchairs, with the people who are like completely bedridden, unable to move, paralyzed, all of that. And his first stop was actually with those people before he got on stage. And to me, that was such a powerful thing to show that he cared for people and not just to be on stage and be important. You don't get much benefits, I guess, in a worldly way from spending time with these people. And then when he got on stage and started speaking, it's just there was so much wisdom that the world really still desperately needs, and wisdom about conflicts, wisdom about how to solve conflicts. And then, he invited us to go to talk to him, to hug him, and then eventually signed a letter to the G7 leaders. And again, like I said, speaking truth to power, and took this letter himself and delivered it to them and got them to sign on it as well and to adopt it as a G7 communique, which in it that letter was about strengthening and supporting the civil society and peacemakers, something we've been trying to get those leaders to publicly say for a decade. And it took Pope Francis to get them to do it. So I think we owe him so much. And I'm 100% sure, and I speak for the two of us, we will never forget that moment, but most importantly, we'll never forget his support.
I can add only that when I heard the sad news of his death, I just burst in tears. And also now was speaking about Pope Francis, and you asked the question, I start crying again. Because for me, it was an emotional, spiritual, and I would even dare to say out-of-body experience, meeting him. And he didn't spoke to us as Pope Francis and a peace activist, or even as people, as just people, he spoke to us as equals. He treated us as equals to humanity and to mankind. And it was very powerful. And I see Pope Francis as a prophet, and I equal him to Moses that didn't enter the promised land. And like Pope Francis hasn't seen peace between Israel and Palestine in his lifetime, but his light and guidance and leadership will light us to enter the promised land and the land of peace. So he will always be with us, always.
Thank you very much for both of you. My second question is connected to tourism. So Professor William Ury from Harvard, he established years ago the project Abraham Path, tourism to fight against terrorism at large in the Middle East. And the Brazilian rabbi, very famous here, Newton Bonder, he took this path and he published a very good book about this experience. My question is related to how the peace is needed for a safe tour to Israel and Palestine. I know, Maoz, you gave some interviews about telling that you decided to fight for peace because peace is important for the work as well. But at the same time, how we can show, we can stimulate tourism for helping to solve the problem. So there's a lot of pilgrimage for Brazilians, Catholics, and evangelicals to Israel and Palestine. But at the same time, how we can enjoy this opportunity to show both sides and improve your fight for peace.
Yes, again, thank you for this question. It's not coincidence that both Aziz and I are and were in the tourism business for nearly 2 decades, because we found that tourism is the best tool to build bridges and break walls and to overcome fear, to overcome ignorance by learning in firsthand, not just in books or not just by hearing about, but actually meeting the people on the ground and not avoiding conflict areas or disputes, but exactly the opposite, engaging with the conflict, engaging with the disagreements, and by giving a space for those disagreements. And the tourists that can sometimes bridge between people that cannot meet, because I cannot go to the West Bank and people from the West Bank, Palestinian, cannot go to Israel. And then the tour group can be the bridge that connecting us and creating a shared interest and a shared vision to both people, even those people, it's very difficult or sometimes impossible and illegal for them to meet. So this is exactly the power of tourism. And I was doing it for 20 years in a great success. Not in terms of finance success maybe, but in terms of building bridges, partnership, and friendship. But after October 7th, I realized that the source, the core of the issue is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And now I'm focusing and resourcing myself to solve the conflict. And tourism is just one tool, but we must implement and use many others, like we are doing now, which now is advocacy, public speaking. So we're still doing tourism, and now we're doing it together. But tourism is only one of the tools in the set that we must use and practice, but we must practice others. Otherwise, it's just not going to be enough.
I'll add that I think just to show you how powerful tourism can be, I went with Maoz to Nazareth. I've been to Nazareth maybe 100 times at least. It's a Palestinian city inside Israel. I've taken tours there. And I think it was kind of amazing that the best tour I've ever had in Nazareth was with Maoz. who's an Israeli who lived in Nazareth. And it was the best tour, not because, you know, he knew more information about the church or something like that, which is most tourists who go to Nazareth, they go to see the church. Almost majority of them don't walk into the old city of Nazareth. And what we did, we walked through the old city, met the residents, met the shopkeepers, visited the cultural kind of bookshop, did an event eventually there, and suddenly I felt I knew the people in the old town in Nazareth. Felt I know the people in Nazareth, and it made it so much more comfortable to be there. And so, like Mao said, I think it's very unique when you really want to use tourism for peace building. In my case, you mentioned earlier dual narratives and multiple narratives. That's a tourism that we created in Israel and Palestine, bringing tours with an Israeli and a Palestinian tour guides, hearing people who live there. Actually, next week, Maoz and I will be joining a tour for a couple of days that Mejdi Tours is organizing. The tour is longer, but we will be joining for a couple of days where we will be bringing our own stories to a group of people who are coming to Israel and Palestine who want to hear that. And I have to say, majority of tourists coming to Israel and Palestine now don't hear that. Majority of tourists who come are coming either for religious experience, as if religious experience doesn't include meeting people, which is kind of funny because if you read the Bible, Jesus going on a pilgrimage from Galilee to Jerusalem, he went and met the Samaritan woman, he met the tax collector, he met people who people viewed as enemies. And yet people come on these religious tours, don't meet a one human being on the tour, don't meet a Palestinian, don't meet an Israeli, except their tour guide. So we think that's important. Or they come to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine in the sense they will not meet the other. And right now, that's the most popular tourism. But it's easy to say that only about Israel and Palestine. I have to say it also exists in Brazil. I told you I've been to Brazil. I went to Sao Paulo and I went to Rio. And it's very easy to go to all the nice and beautiful site and ignore the people who live there. And one of the stories I wrote in my travel book was about going to visit the favela in Sao Paulo, but not going to visit in these tours that you get in a bus and you just take photos of poor people. I went with a local from there, spent a full day there, no camera, no taking photos, really connecting to the community. Got to play football and got terribly defeated by the young people in the favela there. Everywhere we went, people would invite us because they knew the local. I had lunch with the family, and it was such a transformative experience because everyone was telling me about how dangerous favelas are. But my experience in the favela was the most generosity I've experienced in Brazil. And Brazil is a very generous place, but it just was really a change. It changed my perception. And I think that's the kind of tourism that need to exist in Israel and Palestine, but also all over the world.
Thank you. I hold license as a tour guide in Rio, and I take my students to show the Arab and the Jewish part of Rio. So it's very interesting because when we go around the downtown, we have all these Middle Eastern part here as well. And we talk to shopkeepers that they came together as immigrants from the Middle East. So just to let you know that next time you come here, I can show you. My other question is connected to education. In fact, what you share with us that tourism is education as well. So it's a non-formal way of educating. But you've been visiting campuses around the world to talk about both peace and equality and how both sides suffer and won't disappear. So 7 million for each side. So we have to find a common ground to find a common ground for that. From Brazil, I have the impression that people not connected to the conflict are more radical and more harmful. maybe to the peace solution. Am I wrong? Do you feel you are able to de-radicalize them in your talks around the campuses, especially in the United States?
Yes, Monique, what you described is exactly what we encounter when we are going into universities and meeting students, is that those universities, communities, cities are importing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to their communities, universities, and cities, and it's the side they choose become strong part of their personal identity. And they choose a side, and what we are telling them is by choosing a side, you choose the conflict will continue, because there is a mirror between us, and you choose this side and the other will choose the other side. And many times you do win the argument, you do win the debate, but while you winning the argument and the wording of how you want to describe what's happening, is it a genocide? Or it's a justified war? Are you Zionist? Are you anti-Zionist? A Palestinian is a people? No, it's not a people. So maybe you won the debate and the argument, but we are losing our life. For us, it's not winning an argument. We want to win our life. So if you want the conflict to end, if you want the bloodshed to end, you must choose the side of the peacemaker, the side of humanity, of reconciliation, of equality. So only if we work together, both sides together, to achieve that human goal of a lasting peace and a reconciliation, then we will all be able to say we won. So this is, and we sometimes it takes us few minutes, but sometimes 48 hours of sessions we do with students, then with student leaders, then with provosts, with faith leaders, with the business sectors, and with municipality elected. And it's like it's an intervention that we do with those communities, and we felt, or I think we proved that when there is a pure intention from those who invite us, and we can definitely de-radicalize and even bring them to the camp of the peacemakers.
Yeah, I'll only add that I think one of the things that people need in education is also learn not only to debate, but also to act together, to figure out what is it that we can do and what is effective and how to mobilize instead of just argue. It's easy to get on Twitter and just argue with people, but that doesn't change reality. And so part of the conversation is what can we do to change reality rather than argue. And then even if we have some disagreements, like Maoz said about, do you call it a war, do you call it a genocide? We might not agree on that. But even if we have a disagreement, is there a place we can agree on? To me, it's less important what you call it. It's more important, do you want it to stop or not? So if you call it a genocide, but you don't care if it stops and you do nothing about it, that doesn't help me. But if you call it a war and you are working every day to make sure it stops, that's much more important to me than what you call it. So it's instead of this focus on ideology, we try to focus on action instead and on changing reality. The other thing I would say, there isn't almost any place that you can find information, different points of the story, different perspectives, anywhere online. So one of the things we are doing is create that. We created a website called dualnarrative.org, which has stories of Palestinians and Israelis, and it has history, but the history is the multi-narrative history, brings history from Israeli and Palestinian perspective. And we are slowly building that website so teachers, professors, individuals, anyone can actually look at it. And I'll put the website here just so everyone can look at it. But I think that's the beginning. And to me, it's amazing that even if you come to Israel and Palestine, there is no place you can go to that really can show you the different perspectives. So this is something we're working on, and we're hoping soon to have a physical place to give people the different points of views, but also give people the ability to see how to engage and what can they do.
Thank you very much. I'll use these in my classes. As I said, I do this as an intuition, but now it's good to have this website. So thank you for your work. My last question is connected to Brazil. Aziz, you came here many times. Maoz, you must come here. It will be a pleasure to have both of you here in person talking to the Brazilian audiences. But if you were able to meet President Lula or Celso Amorim, the guy in charge of the foreign policy of Brazil, what will you tell them to act regarding solving this conflict? Also, how a huge country as Brazil, with both communities here, Arabs, Muslims, and Jews connected to Israel, what you believe could be a good message to deliver for these decision makers in the Brazilian foreign policy, please?
First, if any of you is in contact or can put us in a meeting with President Lula, we would come specially just for this meeting. Like exactly like we have done and achieved with Pope Francis. It was through a webinar like this that we brought this request, this intent, and it happened only a few weeks after. And what we'll tell President Lula is that history proved that in order to solve a conflict, and definitely multi-generation conflict, we must have international intervenence. We cannot solve it by ourselves. And that we need to do it through legitimize the peacemakers, and peace is something that is not only possible, but is inevitable. And if President Lula will endorse our efforts, it will create a huge impact, not only in Brazil, but also in the Holy Land and the Promised Land. And if in this meeting will bring one of Brazilian best football players that is admired by both Israelis and Palestinians, and he will say, I'm coming for a peace football match with both national teams. And the first half I will play with the Israeli, and the second half I will play with the Palestinian. And Brazil will start invest not in tools of destruction, which is the world is just sending the region tools of destruction, weapons, bombs. But we must start invest in tools of dialogue, in tools of reconciliation. And if Brazil will call the other allies and nations, if it's in South America, if it's the Catholic world, to work together with the peace camp in Israel and Palestine, we're going to make it happen. And just now I'm at my sister's house, and there is an initiative, a new initiative, to bring Arab and Muslim leaders to Jerusalem. And if this initiative will also be endorsed by President Lula, the possibility for it to happen in the near, like in the coming weeks, is much greater. So if President Lula will advocate with us, for us, with those leaders to come and endorse peace and reconciliation in the Holy Land, it will happen. And then we will achieve peace not by 2030, but by the end of this year.
Aziz, please.
I don't think I have much to add to that.
Monique, I guess we have homework to do, right? It's a
Yeah.
challenge. Moaz gave us a challenge.
Thank you very much, Moaz and Aziz. It was a pleasure. Toda rabá, shukran jazilan.
I give it now the floor to Mohammad Arafa, my dear friend and exceptional scholar on Sharia law, Islamic law from the Alexandria University and also Cornell University. Mohammad, the floor is yours now. Guess you're mute. I try to unmute you from here. Where are you? You are mute. I muted you? No, I didn't.
Okay. So Nakai.
Oh.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Clarita, for bringing such a great event as always, and thanks for having me. And I'm very grateful that you guys are all here, and grateful for the invite as well. And Monique, thank you very much for your great questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon at EDP. I really enjoyed the story about what Aziz mentioned and Moaz mentioned as well, and glad to hear that they have been to Aziz had been to Brazil, and I've been to Brazil several times, 6, 7 times, I guess, and it's a great one of the most greatest, lovely places that I love, and I love to do a lot of work there, and it's amazing. I'll be back by the end of June, and I'll stay this time for 6 months, so it's gonna be much more fun, I guess. I think, as you guys mentioned, it is very. First of all, I'm so sorry for both of your loss during this kind of terrible events that we have been watching throughout the last few months, and with the deteriorating situation in the Middle East, and it's very apparent to see that, as was mentioned, the continuity of this kind of situation, and that we are just going to describe, specifically as legal scholars, we describe that event as this, and we describe, and that we are not really taking an action to stop the bloodshed. And this is one of the main things that actually I ended up my last class yesterday here at Cornell to my students about that situation. And here on campus, even, we are facing a kind of pressure, as you probably know, under the Trump administration. It's not an easy right now for faculty, students, scholars, activists to to deal with the situation as we wanted to. And I was reminded by myself, oh, are we now getting towards a kind of a fascist or authoritarian regime here in the United States, which is the total thing that I experienced in Egypt, which is mostly that we have in the Arab world and across the region when it comes to critical matters. But one thing that Moaz mentioned about the football player example, which I do like, because I said the same thing yesterday, not with the football player example, but I mentioned that I wanted to see one day a Palestinian kid with an Israeli kid going to school together one day. I want to see this, because the idea is, at some point, we need to have this to be done. I mean, we were not going to be like, in a way, to see the killing on both sides, all of the instability, and the whole thing of the concept and the displacement and resettlement and all these kind of things, specifically from a legal and emotional perspective. And it play a fundamental role, specifically within the Arab world, as you guys know, when it comes to, the emotional perspective play a fundamental role within the region a lot. So I sometimes I get a lot of criticism from my Arab and Middle Eastern friends, a lot, when I always say that we need to work on a proposal to solve the thing. We do not have to just, we have to describe this and do this. I said, okay, so there is no time for this. We have been doing this for almost more than 80 years right now. So let's focus on bringing peace and it doesn't matter now up to this point what kind of proposal that we need to do in order to achieve peace. I mean, a lot of people, specifically within the Middle East, will describe things as in contradiction to whatever the legal system, the Islamic law, the treaties, and the international legal documents and the universal documents and all that kind of things. But the idea is now we are just wondering to achieve this. And for this, I mean, to achieve this point, I mean, for me, like as a scholar and as a professor teaching around the world, and which is one of the main things that I'm also proposing that in my classes at EDP, to teach Brazilian students about the conflict and the history of the conflict. And I'm glad that we have Monique there as a Middle Eastern scholar, because this is always important to teach students about, and that's a problem here we see in the United States. Our students are not aware of the thing. They just got news from the media and all these kind of things, which is not a good source, as you guys know. So always my American students here, every year when they got my classes, which is mostly focused on the Middle East and all these kind of things, they got to learn something by the end of the class, at the end of the year. They said, oh, we came with an idea and we get out with another idea. And that's I think that as Moaz and Aziz, and related to what Monique mentioned about education, how it's play a fundamental role in changing the concept, changing the mentality towards peace. In the end, that's what we need, you know. So so I guess my few questions or remarks, it's going to be like few to both of you, which I was like working on them yesterday. I mean, it's mostly, I'm not sure if they are emotional questions or legal question, but so emotionally for both of you, as a kind of, as you mostly guys, you work in the tourism field and probably the journalism area. So how do you guys manage the emotional toll of covering such a complex and devastating situation when reporting from or about communities affected by the violence on both sides? How you guys feel about this, and emotionally, and probably from your experience? I know it's hard, but I'd love to hear about that.
Well, first, thank you, Mo, and I just sent you a direct message with my contacts, so I hope we can talk.
Sure.
Maoz is in Israel, but I go back and forth between Palestine and the US, so we should definitely stay in touch, and we understand what you talked about in universities. Like mentioned earlier, we've been to many universities and classrooms. Actually, not far from you, we were in Syracuse, we were in Rochester, so very close.
So it's very close to Ithaca.
Yeah, very close to Ithaca. We could have, if we knew you then, we could have driven by to say hello. But on your question about the emotional reality, I think if you stop feeling with people, you lose contact. And both of us have many friends in Gaza, for example. And the reality there, I woke up this morning reading that 46 people were killed. And I'm not even sure were killed since when. Was it 12 hours, 24 hours? It's just becoming so common. And if you lose touch with this reality, you can't speak to people who you don't feel their pain. So that needs to be there. I think you have to. You saw Maos cry twice in this phone call. So that is, I think you have to feel the emotions. You have to show even your emotions and connect to people's pain. Because this work is impossible if you don't do that. And if you bury it and don't show it and don't deal with it, it explodes and it makes you even more depressed and more angry. So we talk about it. We talk to our friends who are in pain, who are suffering. There are times we cry. There are times we like I remember after October 7th, an Israeli friend of mine called me, and he lives in Berlin, and he was very angry, very upset, and he called, and which was to me very meaningful that of all people he decided to call me. And he said, I'm just calling because I need someone to cry with. And there are moments where that's very, very important. But to me, the most important part of this, that pain and that anger that's generated, every time you see a child being killed, it makes you angry. Every time you see innocent people suffer, it makes you angry. And it made me angry on October 7th, made me angry before, it made me angry at what's happening in Gaza. But I think what you do with it is really what's important. And what we try to do is to use that pain and that anger to fuel the work we are doing. And instead of making it want us to hurt somebody and make us hateful, we try to channel that pain because it's a lot of energy that comes with pain. We channel that anger. There's so much power that comes with anger, and it can be very destructive. We channel that in a way to make us work harder to end this reality, to end this nightmare, to end the killing, to end the suffering. That's to us how we channel it, and that gives us a lot more strength.
Right. That's great to hear.
Yeah, exactly. And I will add that we give space for those emotions.
Sure.
And we encourage also very difficult emotions to come and to be present, including the emotions of revenge. Many people are seeking a revenge nowadays. So we said if we'll oppress those emotions, they won't disappear. If we'll say we choose forgiveness, so we are superior to those who are seeking revenge, we won't be able to transform them.
Right.
And transform the emotion of revenge to a different actions, not violence action, but constructive actions. So we told them, yes, we were also seeking revenge.
Right.
And we tell them how we overcome those feelings. It doesn't matter if you're Christian,
right.
Muslim, Jewish, or others. In all our holy books, none of the prophets ever prophecy for revenge.
Right.
All the prophecy for reconciliation, for compromising, for a dialogue, for peace.
Right.
So, and if it will be used, students will tell them, we'll read them a poem that reject revenge. We're not going to tell them you are wrong, okay? Or there is no space for it. The contrary.
Sure.
So we'll give space and we'll start working with those emotions and we'll encourage people and the people we dialogue with to share even their secrets emotions, the most difficult questions. And then we can start working and transform those emotions, sometimes to tears. For me, it's a healing action to cry. But for someone to sing, for someone to dance, and then for others to hug.
Right.
So how we can challenge those emotions into something that is curing, is healing. And not if we stuck with those emotions and we feel that it's not legitimate to share them, then we are in a trouble.
This is really amazing, and I'm totally echoing both of you because I remember at the beginning of the attack, I was in Saudi Arabia, and it was interesting because I published a piece after the attack, like 3 days after or so, and there was like echoing on the idea of achieving peace and how the Middle Eastern governments need to receive this not with a kind of just taking a very quick answer as with just as you mentioned, was with like, oh, we'll try to get revenge and retaliation and all these kind of things, and there was like echoing from that, and they get very criticized in Saudi Arabia. Even when I gave a talk about the whole situation, the dean called on me in his office and he told me, you are not in the United States here. So it was I was like even critical of my home Egypt and critical of the United States government. And I touched base, of course, on the accountability of the Arab governments, and of course that was kind of tricky for the thing. So recently, I came out with another piece. It's mostly academically, and I'll be more than happy to share, which is talking about mostly touching the base on normalizing the relationship. Which this is what I call it. It's by George Mason Law Review, and I was like calling it relationship normalization. And here at Cornell, my colleagues was like saying, "Oh man, we are not sure if your work visa will be renewed again under the Trump administration." So it is interesting to see that at some point that I am echoing for this, which for a lot of people is kind of strange, that coming from an Egyptian or a Middle Eastern or Arab calling for a relationship normalization, which I totally agree. That's the only thing probably that I agree with President Trump, that we need, like when it came to the Abrahamic Accords, that was a great step. I really loved this thing. And which is the same thing that I always have been, actually, when I was like talking to my students for the last couple of weeks with the end of the semester about the conflict and Israel-Palestine, and how Sadat did a great thing within the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. And we like that in Egypt. We do like that. We do appreciate that. That's important. And that's the main thing that we need to do, and in order to end any kind of conflict, because a way that we think that in enduring or in lasting violence on both sides, that shouldn't be tolerated in the way that, as Aziz mentioned, emotionally, the kids that have been killed every single day and all that, and moms and dads and families. So this is on both sides, and I totally like that you mentioned the Pope on that perspective, because yes, he has been a big voice, a huge voice, I remember in 2019 he came to Egypt and the United Arab Emirates to establish what we call the Brotherhood Declaration or statement between the Muslim world and the Christian world or the Western world. And that was a kind of a great thing. I remember that I was talking about this. It was in Lebanon, and I also wrote a piece on this, like an op-ed, and I was like saying the Imam and the Pope. And it was really interesting to see that we had this kind of achievement within the Muslim world and the Western world. So I guess this is a kind of a moment that we need to be all together in this boat. I mean, it is very important, and this will lead me to my second question. I guess, which probably again, it's of what you guys probably know, that President Trump have been issued or signing an executive orders to take measures on fighting anti-Semitism on campuses here, and this is one of the things that we have been facing as faculty, as universities. We received letters from the administration about taking measures and taking steps against students or faculty that they are having voice. We have our great friend here, Michael Dorff, is a big name in constitutional law, and he has been rallying last week against what the president have been doing. In terms of that, we see it as an attack on academic freedom, academic integrity, and all that. And the idea is, the thing in here, we're talking about anti-Semitism, and we don't talk about Islamophobia, which we'll see that there is a kind of also a rise in that, based on another executive order he issued on the first day in office, when he was like talking about, or issued an order said protecting the United States from foreign terrorist and national security, for public safety and national security, without any kind of definition. If you look at the executive order. So my question here will be to both of you: what is the general reaction within Israel how they, in your view, how do rising incidents of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, both in Israel and abroad, affect public perceptions and media narratives around terrorism, and what responsibilities that do journalists have in shaping those narratives fairly?
I can just say, wow, there's so much stuff in what you said, so I'm trying to think where to even start. I do a lot, and I think Maoz's brother is gonna join me in one of those. Do a lot of trainings on Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I deal with the Islamophobia, and then Maoz's brother is helping with the anti-Semitism part. And I think that's both of these important. I see anti-Semitism, by the way, as anti-Palestinian, because it helps rally people against what we're trying to do. When you attack Jewish people for being Jewish, it doesn't really help the Palestinian cause in any way. If anything, it hurts the Palestinian cause. But there is an apathy, especially in America, and it's an apathy also in Israel towards anti-Muslim sentiment. I can give you an example. 2 days ago, you in New York, 2 days ago in New York, you had this group of people marching in New York street chanting death to Arabs.
Mm.
The arrests were made. They also assaulted a woman who ended up being an Israeli Jewish woman, by the way. Assaulted a woman, beat her up, and the police were there and no one was arrested.
Mm.
That to me is very terrifying as also somebody who is here in the US, seeing the apathy. The governor in New York didn't, we talk about Trump a lot, but Democrats are also complicit.
Right.
Governor of New York is a Democrat. I actually knew her family very well, knew her father who traveled with me to Jerusalem before he passed away. She didn't say a word about
Mm.
it. I don't know
Mm.
if since then she has, but I checked yesterday at least she hasn't. So there is an apathy as if this is not a big deal. I've known imams in New York, actually multiple imams in New York who've been attacked, mosques who've been
Mm.
attacked. Has
Mm.
become so much of a norm, and law enforcement has been very uh, apathetic to it, but media also, the coverage of such stories is non-existent. I remember when the Palestinian child in New York was killed, 6 years old, killed in anti-Palestinian attack, and one of the news channels wanted to do a story on it, so they called me and then they canceled me half an hour before. And instead, they invited the Anti-Defamation League CEO to speak. This is the guy who supports deporting Palestinians from the US. This is a guy who thinks it's what Trump is doing regarding canceling green cards and so on is a good idea. They invited him to speak on it. And to me, that's like so offensive to the Palestinian Muslim community in America, where research actually shows we only invited to television 3% of the times of
Mm.
what we are discussed.
Mm.
3%. And almost all these 3% when we are being accused of doing something wrong. But when we are victims, we never invite it. So that needs to change. I think this whole concept of how do we view, I think every hate crime needs to be equally treated as a hate crime. We need to create awareness about it. It's not only hate crimes, it's also how people treat it at work, how people treat it. I do anti-Islamophobia training for law firms, for universities, for companies. And it's very important because we don't even think about those places. In schools, Muslim girls have reported being bullied not by fellow students, by teachers in
Mm.
schools for wearing head covers, teachers removing girls' head covers. That happens in America way more often than you
Sure.
think. Vast majority of girls in America, Muslim girls, have reported attacks on them. It's the only hate crime, by the way, that more women get it than men toward any communities, toward the Muslim community, because they're very visible with the headscarf. And
Mm.
I have one friend who decided to stop wearing a headscarf because of those attacks.
Mm.
That's how significant it is. And that's in America. I'm not talking in, the classic, what we think of classic authoritarian regime. So there is a lot of work that we have to do when it comes to the US. And I think similarly in Israel, especially under this current government, death to Arabs chants
Mm.
are unfortunately too common, and I've gone through them more than once being in Jerusalem, having to walk through the city, hearing people chanting death to Arabs, and I cannot explain how terrifying when you're walking on the street and somebody saying, I want to kill you, basically. It's beyond horrifying.
Yeah.
I can just agree with each word Aziz just said, and bringing the Jewish perspective, I believe that in order to fight anti-Semitism, we must in the same time fight Islamophobia. It's go both way, and this is when we're talking about equality and dignity and shared acknowledgement and recognition. There will be no equality to one if there will be no equality to the other. So I think basically, if you ask me what Trump is doing now, you don't need me to tell you for more. He's doing it just for his own sake and for maybe his, I don't know, donors, or I don't, again, but not for the Jewish people. Okay, there is nothing, I would, nothing that it's not for the good of nor the Jewish, nor the Muslim, nor any human being.
I totally agree, and I think it's this is how I think we feel that he's trying to build his base on that he's trying, like, for example, during the campaign trail, he was like trying to convince and persuade Muslims that he will be the better savior than the Biden administration in solving the problem, and I will be doing this, I will end the war in the Middle East in a day. It would never gonna happen if Biden wasn't elected. This kind of things that he have been actually brainwashing his base, and now I think people started to understand how he ran the principle that he ran on, and now they are regretting their votes. And I told them, guys, we have been warning you. Now the regret will not gonna help us or help you or help America. Now it hurts America and hurt everyone in America, as we can see based on every single day. He's keeping us like busy with hilarious things, which will lead me to the third question to both of you also, like on his recent proposal, which I don't think that even Marco Rubio, his Secretary of State, is a fan. Or even I do believe that even there is nobody even within the Israeli government or cabinet have been adopting this proposal or raising the idea of the proposal that he had been mentioning last month or by the end of February. Maybe a few members of the far right, but I'm not sure. So so for you guys, what is the general reaction within an Israel? And of course, in different parts of Palestine, to Donald Trump proposal on Gaza, and how it's like being viewed in terms of feasibility, regional implication. Of course, there are going to be legal impediment on that, and the alignment with the Israel current security and political goals. How do you see this?
So Mo, I would like, thank you for the question. I would like to transform this question to a different field and a different answer.
Please do.
If you don't mind.
Please do.
And again, because I'm, for a major part of my adult life, I was against the Netanyahu regime. Okay, I was protesting against him. And what I realized lately is that when I'm opposing him, I just making him stronger. What he want to do is to create a chaos, create a division of and polarization between us, and that we're gonna talk and resource ourselves into fighting his policy and not creating a new vision. And our theory of change it contains 5 steps in order to make a dream into a reality. And this is exactly what Trump has done. And this is what unfortunately the extremists throughout the world has done. They were using the power of dream, of vision. He visioned a Riviera in Gaza. Okay, real estate Riviera in Gaza. And we, instead of offering an alternative vision, are opposing his vision. But this is not the way to win, not to win, to win the discourse and to win the future. We are wasting our time. We are wasting our time, again, debating and arguing what do we think about what Trump said or done or act or whatever.
Right.
And our theory of change is, again, like I said, 5 steps. Step number 1 is to dream. Step number 2 is to find our common ground and shared values: equality, dignity, shared acknowledgement and recognition, reconciliation and healing, security and safety. Third step is to build a coalition, because no one can fulfill big dreams on his own. So this is why the Clarita, Monique, Mo, this and everyone here, this is why when we are talking to you, we don't speak to you as speakers to the audience. We want to build a partnership. So we must create a very, very strong and powerful partnership. And I hope that in few weeks, President Lola will join the coalition.
That would be wonderful.
And then the first step is to build a roadmap. Because while in our dream, we've seen the promised land. But without a roadmap, we don't know how to get there. So we must have a roadmap. And the fifth chapter is the execution, to walk the talk. And within this theory of change, we already got a roadmap. We have a roadmap. Again, only 5-chapter roadmap. For Aziz and myself, we must keep things very simple. If it's too complicated, if we're reaching the 6th chapter, we are lost. We are lost because the reality is so devastating and so much uncertainty. So we must simplicity our action, okay, and our roadmap. So chapter number 1 in the roadmap is to dream. The only way to change reality is through dreaming.
Right.
This is, we've been speaking to neuroscience, spiritual leader, faith leader, and we realized that the only way to change reality is to play in the fields of dream. So we have a dream and we are very proud of it. Now we need to amplify the dream. This is exactly what we are doing here in this webinar. We need to legitimize the dream. I think, Monique, you said how important was meeting with Pope Francis. Pope Francis legitimate Aziz and myself for forever, basically. Okay, he legitimate us. This is something you cannot buy with money. There is no other way than receiving legitimacy from Pope Francis. So we must legitimize peace and peacemakers. We must change policy, start investing in dialogue, share the initiatives, reconciliation, and not only in tools of distraction and bloodshed. And the 5th chapter in the roadmap is to create the political will. Political will that will push politicians to sit in negotiation room, which they haven't done for decades. They haven't done for decades. And we must guarantee that in this room will be gender equality. Because research proves that when the negotiation room are genderly equal, the percentage of success rise by nearly 40%. And we must have in this room, again, forgive me, not only lawyers,
True.
not only lawyers, politician or general, but we must have faith leader. We must have a spiritual leader. We must have reconciliation experts. We must have peacemakers. We must have football players. We must have musicians. They will legitimate the room. So 5 steps to make a dream into a reality, 5 steps and 5-chapter roadmap, how to achieve peace between Israel and Palestinians by the year 2030. And let us...
I have to stop you for just 1 second. I unfortunately have to leave in 1 minute. So Maoz can continue. So I'm sorry, Maoz.
Forever.
But I just wanted to say this was really, really great to talk to you. And Mo, I will just add to Maoz's answer. I think the right, not only the far right, this is maybe a bit, I'll disagree with you, not even the center at the moment in Israel, not even some of the left. I would say Israel and Palestine have a vision. You can tell our Palestinian president just appointed a deputy. He is the least popular guy in Palestine. Like our Palestinian president is very unpopular. New deputies even less popular. I was making a joke yesterday that people started praying that Mahmoud Abbas can live forever because we really don't like his appointment of a deputy. And as you know how the Middle East works, that means this guy will be the president and none of us will have, unfortunately, a choice because we haven't had elections in the last 15, 16 years. But that's actually more in the last 18 years. But that's why we don't focus, like Mao said, only on opposing, but we have to create a vision that people can rally behind and say, okay, here's what we do. the politicians of today in Israel, in Palestine, are horrible. We can keep tweeting about how horrible they are and talking about it, about how horrible they are. It's not gonna really change the reality. It's when we start having an alternative vision, then act on that alternative vision. And I'll end with this because I have to go to my next meeting. I'm sorry. But it was a pleasure meeting you all, and I hope to see you all in Brazil soon. And Mo, hopefully I'll see you in the US soon.
Sure, absolutely.
Very quickly, Mr. Abu Sarah, I would like to thank you for your participation in the name of the Brazilian Bar Association.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We continue the debate.
The dialogue.
Yes,
It's not a
sorry I
debate.
interrupted you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess, Mohammed, do you have another question?
I think it's a kind of to end up with like a personal question for, I mean, it was like for both for Aziz, but maybe probably Moaz also have a response to that. Do you, I mean, like, so the idea is like, I was like, in the context of seeing a Palestinian kid with an Israeli kid going to school, do you guys think that you mentioned 2030, which I really like. I hope that it's going to be before that. But do you think that, because I talked to my students and I mentioned something and they told me always like how, I'm not sure if it's how crazy or how exaggerating it could be, but I'm not sure. So this is what I wanted to ask you guys. I was like telling my students, what about if, in terms of having the peace thing, if the Palestinians and the Israeli themselves, no one else from other sides, can intervene and to be talking to each other. And then the question was, okay, so who will gonna lead this? So to be honest, I'm not sure, specifically on the Palestinian side, I'm not sure who can lead a negotiation on behalf of Palestinians. I'm not talking about people in Gaza or people in just West Bank. I'm talking about Palestinians as a whole, like not people like talking about militias like Fatah, Hamas, all this kind of militias, or the people that they try to exploit or manipulate Palestinians. And to make them in that bad situation right now. So I am not sure if there is because so the Arab world have been a part of this conflict for a while. I think the United States, the European Union countries, and there is nothing have been achieved. So what about if we're leaving it only to Palestinians and the Israeli themselves? I'm not sure if that's a feasible option. Is that possible? So that's what I'm asking. So I will appreciate an answer on that. And that's my last question.
Okay. So I think in the negotiation room, there should be more than one negotiation room. The most important one is the Israeli-Palestinian negotiation room. And there will need to be election, okay, a public election. And the Palestinian people need to vote and elect their representative. No one else can do it, can force who will represent the Palestinian people. They must be self-governed. And there should be, at the same time, there should be more negotiation room between the Jewish world and the Islamic world to bring the most profound and important faith leaders.
Agree.
We need to have a negotiation room between the Zionist identity, which is Israel, to the Arab world.
Yeah.
Okay. So because recent polls in Israel within the Israeli discourse showing again and again that the majority of Israel will compromise on a Palestinian state in exchange of recognition and normalization and security guarantees from the Arab nation, Muslim world, the Europe, and the US. So the solution is already clear. Everyone knows what need to be done. But now we need courageous and brave leadership because we are lacking those leaders. So this is where Aziz and I, but so many of us, okay, we are just representing the movement. We are representing the camp, the peace camp. We are rising and we said, okay, we are here. We are here to work with whomever is willing to work with us. If it's MBS, if it's Assisi, if it's Trump, or of course President Lula, we are here. And if you legitimize us, it will force our current politician to shift, like Menachem Begin completely shifted after the visit of Anwar Sadat.
Yeah, true.
Completely shifted. Menachem Begin, for those here in the bar that don't know him, he was the Israeli prime minister that in the year of 1977 welcomed President Sadat on his historical visit to Israel and Jerusalem. But Menachem Begin, before the establishment of the State of Israel, he was the head of the Irgun, a violent resistance movement. Menachem Begin was a wanted terrorist by the British mandate. He commanded more than 300 attacks against the British, against the Arab people. Many civilian people were killed. Menachem Begin was against reconciliation between the Jewish people and the German people. That was signed 12 years after the independence of Israel. And he was, for 39 years, he was in the opposition. And then few months after getting into the prime minister seat, he welcomed Sadat. And we need to create this political will that will allow or force the current politician. We have no leaders. They will become leaders only if they will start doing what's good for the people and what's not just what's good for to be re-elected in the next election. And they can be transformed from politician to leaders. They can be transformed from those who choose paths of violence, revenge, and division to become peacemakers. And we need to bring this potential and to make it into a reality.
Great.
Sorry for the long answer.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
I myself have two questions, but I pass the word to Mr. Nathaniel Braia, who has a question to you, Mr. Maus. He is the director or president chair of the Writers Union of Brazil, right, Mr. Nathaniel? I guess you're mute. I
will just usually Aziz takes the difficult questions. Okay, we have a secret sign language, silent language, that if it's a difficult question, I mark it to Aziz and he takes it. So please, no difficult question from now on, just easy questions.
Well, can I want to present myself. I am of a Jewish family whose four grandfathers grew up in Palestine, in Safed. So I am a Palestinian Jewish from my origin. And I am the secretary of the Writers Union of São Paulo, and also editor of International of the paper Hora do Povo, People's Hour in Brazil. So I studied electrical engineer in the Technion, and I am also Israeli. Well, I'd like, first of all, to congratulate Maus and all the peace camp for their efforts to change the situation. And I would like to make some observations before my question. First of all, I will bring an example about the absurdity of the rupture of the ceasefire by the Netanyahu government, the recent rupture of the ceasefire. A Brazilian of Palestinian origin, which is called Walid Khalid, he died of tortures in the Israeli prison. And it is already a month, and even the body of him, the Israeli government doesn't give to the Brazilian family, which makes very, very clear the absurdity of this regime of Netanyahu. that I would like to also to repudiate the prison of Mahmoud Khalil, which is an activist, a peace activist, solidarity to Palestinians, and is in prison now by the McCarthyism of Mr. Trump. So, but in all this situation, we must have hope, I think. On the last Saturday, we had at one of the greatest Brazilian synagogues, which is Bethel, commanded by the Rabbi Uri Lam, an event for peace. It lasted for 3 hours. Many chorus groups, Jewish groups, with 11 Jews singing and claiming for peace. And this is events like that are growing in our Jewish community in Brazil, which I mean that is countercurrent against those who bet on war. So we have grounds to think of hope and going out of this terrible situation. Well, after saying that, I would like to ask if there is a change in the mood of the Israeli public towards the peace camp, that we can see this and hope about this change without the prevailing of the peace camp of Israel. There is no solution for the conflict, first of all. And also asks the second question, what do you think about the government voting not recognizing the Palestinian state, but the Knesset and Israeli government? What do you think of that? Those are my questions.
Okay, Netanel, thank you for your question and also for your comments. They are all highly valuable. The peace camp in Israel, and really thank you for asking that, is growing, is gaining momentum, is much more diverse and loud than you might think or consider. Next week, on the 8th and the 9th, the It's Time Coalition, a peace coalition of more than 60 organizations, civil society organizations, Jewish and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians. I will mention just a few. I think it was you, Clarita, or Monique that mentioned some of those names. From Standing Together and the Family Forum and Women Wage Peace and Women of the Sun and Combatant for Peace and Rabbi for Human Rights. And again, Interact, Aziz and my organization is, of course, part of the coalition. And the New Israel Fund and Mechazkim and Zazim, and again, more than 60 are gathering together. We coalesce together under the umbrella name of It's Time Coalition. For the first time in decades, the peace camp is synchronized. The peace camp have the same mission and the same goal. I would say goals: to stop the war, to make a deal, and to start a peace resolution. And we rented the biggest venue within Israel, the ICC in Jerusalem. So we rented it for the entire Friday, the 9th, and the day before the 8th, we're going to do multi-location event in East and West Jerusalem. Music, culture, panels, education, security, reconciliation, and inspirational, spiritual, faith leaders. We're all going to gather in Jerusalem. And I will send you also here in the chat soon the full agenda in English will be updated soon. You can see how rich and profound agenda it is. And we are doing it in the hardest time. The prisoners and hostages, there is no deal yet. Okay, no deal. The war is still being waged. The horrors and devastating news from Gaza, from the West Bank, are still coming on an hourly basis. And according to the reality, like I think it was Aziz said, we should fight each other. We cannot find a common ground, but we're here to prove that yes, we have a common ground. And yes, we are on the same side of equality, the same side of dignity, the same side of reconciliation. And if you have to divide us, please do it by those who believe in those values and those who don't yet. And we need your support. We are under sponsored, and also from Brazil, while the Brazilian Jewish philanthropy is investing heavily in settlers, in messianic Jews, in radicals. We don't see your support. We don't see your partnership. We are here determined to walk on the ground. And we're gonna we're gonna fulfill our dream, I promise you. We're gonna make peace by 2030. But if we'll do it earlier, we're gonna save many more lives. We're gonna save life. But if we will be under budget and under sponsored, it's just gonna be more difficult and it will take more time. So if we'll coalesce together and bring influencers and bring philanthropy to invest in peace and reconciliation, we're going to fulfill our shared dream, the dream of humanity, the dream of our prophets. And there is no better place to fulfill those dreams and prophecy than the Holy Land and the Promised Land. So I hope I answered you, Nathaniel.
Thank you. If you write about that, I promise to publish your article in my paper.
I will post it in the chat soon. The link. Okay, the link.
I put it in the chat. My link.
Okay, I'm posting it.
My
Give me a second. I'm posting it in the chat in a second. Okay, it's the website, the mini site of the It's Time Coalition, the People Peace Summit.
Very well.
In a second, it will be in the chat. Yeah.
Obrigado, Clarita.
Sempre bem-vindo, Dr. Nathaniel. Moz, I have a question. Actually, what are the lines of actions of Interact? We want to understand more, and we want to know how the public, the Brazilian audience, and other institutions of civil society can help you in your job.
So we initiate 5 programs, which they all are acting in the framework of the 5 actions that need to be taken. The dream, amplify the dream, legitimize the dream, advocate for policy change, and create the political will. And you can find all those programs within our website that Clarita, I think you shared before, or Monique, I've seen it there, and we can share all those links also in the YouTube that will when it will be published. You can the biggest thing you can do is amplify our voices. Okay, that for the Brazilian people to know that there is a peace camp, a shared peace camp of Israelis and Palestinians working together under a common ground, shared values, that dreaming and proud of their dream of a lasting peace in the Holy Land. And amplify our voices, and each one of you can do it within his family, workplace, community, and as high as it can go. Okay, as high as it can go, and we are not afraid to speak to power. okay, to speak to leaders. This is actually what we are good at, but it doesn't necessarily need to be us. It can be someone from Standing Together, for Women Made Peace, or from the other organization that we partner with. Amplify our voices. Dream with us. Dream with us. If we won't dream, we won't change reality. And so dream and legitimize us. Write about that. Speak to us with your students. Speak to us. Maybe we can do something similar like this. We've done it in Italy with judges. Let's meet judges, Brazilian judges, okay? Would love to come and have a webinar with judges. And maybe then with the foreign ministry or with Brazilian faith leaders. So I don't know exactly if the bishop or cardinal of Brazil, and I guess there is more than one, he can also endorse our efforts. So there are so many venues and action that we can do together. So it's an endless list of things we can do together. So I just mentioned a few, and keep bringing. We can do something like this with different speakers every month to keep the momentum. Okay, to build trust, to build our relationship. Every month or a quarter, there can be 2 other peacemakers, if it's with Interact or with the other organization that we work with. So there's so many opportunities to cooperate.
I just want to add a little word in here in terms of, you mentioned judges in Italy. It will be great because I'm sure that 3 weeks ago I met Minister Bahozo in Austin, in Texas, and it was fun. He was giving a talk at the university, and he's a good friend of mine, as Clarita know that. And I'm sure that he will welcome the idea, because we talked about teaching and educating the general public in Brazil about the conflict, because the conflict, we brought up the idea in Austin and we talked about it. And I'm sure Minister Bahozo can help us with doing this and invite other judges and justices around to keep much more educated about this. I just wanted to add this for sure.
That is a very good reminder. And Maus, I tell you that the Brazilian Bar Association is committed to those dialogue talks. We are reaching some misunderstanding by the part of this polarized audience that wants us to give voice only to one side or another. That's not what I think really works. It's not. It goes totally against my morals, totally against my values, and it will not happen. Not under my watch. We are committed to make 3 or 4 roundtables with those activists, and I received some pressure, but finally people understood the proposition and understood that the proposition goes to the heart of what the Brazilian Bar Association is about. It is a hub to enhance the understanding and enhance the juridical culture of our country. We used to be a country that stood for pacific coexistence. We are importing the public debate of this war in the worst manner possible, like kind of granting extremists, activists, the power to be anti-Semite or Islamophobic. Come on, we don't want that. We want to reframe the public debate in a more rational manner and reasonable manner. But that would be my intervention. I don't know if there are more questions from the audience. Miriam, please.
Hi, yes, my name is Miriam. I live here in São Paulo, Brazil, and I am part of the Women Wage Peace, which is connected to Women of the Sun in Palestine. Okay, we are one of the 60 movements that Maus mentioned towards the peace, and we do care about having peace. I don't believe people want war, okay? But we have issues regarding the education, mostly. It has been said already, but it's just to endorse it, okay? How Zionists are seen around the world. That's an issue because being Israeli or being Zionist doesn't mean to be a colonialist, to be all these things people say. There is a lot of prejudice on either side. So, of course, there is a matter of education, and like Mo said, mentioned, Mohammed, right? You mentioned that you wanted to see Israeli and Arab children going to school together. Okay. In 1922, we were in Israel for a few months because my husband was working at the Weizmann Institute. And we've seen Israeli with Muslim kids. We've seen it there, okay? It's not, I used to go rowing in Tel Aviv, and I've seen girls wearing the headscarf, rowing with Jewish children, and we've seen all the religions at the Yarkon Park in Tel Aviv. So I don't know how things are right now after October 7, but I didn't have this so very segregated vision of Israel. And I would like people to see that, because of course there are, like it has been said, that the population of Israel has a high percent of Arab people, right? As Maoz mentioned in the beginning. So there is a lot of prejudice in either side, because as humans, we don't want to fight. The problem is, what do people tell us to do? How do they educate us? How do they educate us? What should people in schools get to know? How are the children in Palestine being educated to hate or to accept? And of course, I believe that there should be two states, or one state with the both nationalities. But it makes me really sad to see how the left party sees Israel here in Brazil. Okay, and okay, I don't want to extend myself a lot, but I think I had to say these things here, whether it helped or not. Thank you, and thank you all of you who came to speak here. It has been very nice to be here with you. I'm very thankful for this opportunity, and I'll go through the dual narratives and check it out.
Thank you very much, Miriam. I guess we are running out of time, and I thank you so much, our guests in Maozina, in the name of both Maozina and Mr. Abu Sarah. It was a great morning, and as soon as we have the upload of the video in the YouTube channel, I'll send to you all. I also thank the moderators, my dear friends, and I have the privilege to be an admirer and fan of my friends. Monique Sohachevsky, Mohamed Arafa, I hope that you both get tired of me soon.
I would not.
Being in Brasilia and being close, because I need you guys. You open my mind and my heart, and it's a privilege to have you near. And all the audience, I thank you so much. Eu agradeço a todos que estiveram conosco até então. Colocaremos legendas em português nesse vídeo. Muito obrigada a todos vocês e até o próximo evento. Bye, bye.
Clarita, how do we say in Portuguese, peace is possible?
Paz é possível.
Paz é possível.
Yes, yes. And how do I say in Hebrew?
Shalom אפשרי.
Shalom
אפשרי.
אפשרי.
תודה רבה, מעוז, ממש. תודה.
Bye.
להתראות.
Bye bye. See you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.